The spring equinox, which marks the first day of spring, was March 20th. Now, as the days get longer and the weather gets warmer, we have more things growing in the garden. Come see what we like to harvest at the beginning of spring. My favorite things to harvest in the spring is green garlic. Green garlic comes from when you leave your heads of garlic in the ground in the fall. So we start by putting the shovel right next to the garlic and going straight down to not cut it, and then lifting it up so we can separate it from the dirt. If we just pulled straight up from the stalks, they would be likely to break. There's the stalks of the green garlic. It's kind of like green onions, but with a garlicky taste. So we need to get all the dirt off, and we will also spray it off with a hose when we're all done, just to make sure to get all of the dirt out of the way. You see the roots there that came out of the cloves of garlic that we left in the ground, that then each clove from the head of garlic grew into one of those stalks. It can take a lot of work to get all the dirt off the roots. There is our harvest of green garlic.
Harvesting spring raab. Raab, spelled R-A-A-B, is the little flower buds. And yes, they look like broccoli because that's basically what broccoli is. That grow, these little flower buds grow on many different Brassica plants. Plants in the Brassica family, like cabbages and kohlrabis and broccoli as well. So all of these plants are biennial. They go through one whole season just growing in the form that you're familiar with them. But then the second season, the next spring, which is now, because we planted these back in last year. The second season, they make this flower stem that is edible and delicious, and it comes up in the spring. It's very tender, and if we break these off, the leaves are edible, the flower buds are edible, just like broccoli, and they're sweet because of the frost, the late spring frost or late winter frost we've been having. And by picking these off, we will encourage more of this raab to grow. And we will get to enjoy the delicious, tender, sweet Brassica or cruciferous. These are also called cruciferous vegetables. And this is a special spring treat because it only grows this time of the year. Except broccoli, we have bred over hundreds of years to keep making these delicious raab through their whole growing season. This raab can be eaten raw. It can be steamed or roasted, cooked in many different ways. It's very tender because it's growing so fast. So it doesn't need much cooking at all. And the more we harvest, the more we'll get. Because every time I break off one of these main stems, you can already see the little side shoots coming out. So we might get another couple harvests from these former cabbage plants before they make their way to going to seed. Because the plant's goal right now is to get these little buds to flower and be pollinated and become seed. So the seeds of Brassica plants, like cabbage that we plant, have come from a plant that was allowed to live all the way through the winter and make raab and flowers and seeds the next year.
Another great crop to harvest in the spring are sunchokes. We can harvest sunchokes in the fall, but they are great to harvest in the spring because they get sweeter after a frost. So here is what a sunchoke looks like. They grow off the roots of the stalks that you see in the background, which kind of flower and look like sunflowers, hence the name sunchokes. And a sunchoke is considered a tuber, so it is a place where the plant stores starches and sugars. There is another sunchoke. So to harvest them, we just dig through the dirt to find them. A great reason to harvest in the spring is because they're starting to sprout roots, like you can see on the end of these sunchokes here. So once they sprout roots, they're going to try to grow into a new plant. So we want to take off the root and harvest them before that so that we can eat them when they're nice and sweet. In the spring, the greens start to grow again. This chard has lived through the winter and is starting to sprout new leaves. We're also getting greens from our kale and our fava beans that we can harvest and eat. This isn't ready to harvest yet, but our asparagus is starting to sprout. Asparagus only grows in the spring, and then once it's harvested, it won't grow again until the next year. That's what we're harvesting so far this spring. Next, let's see what we'll be planting.